Welcome to another edition of MSP Tech How To, your go-to place for easy-to-follow tech tutorials. My name is Chris, and on this channel we break down common technical problems, guide you through step-by-step solutions, and review the latest must-have technologies. Click the subscribe button below and stay tuned with all things tech in the MSP space, and let's get started. On today's episode, we're going to go through some quality of service configurations on Juniper SRX platforms. And I'll put a link in my notes on this video to my website where you can download a copy of this example configuration script for yourself. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a configuration template. One of the things I love to do with Junos is to create configuration examples that basically you can copy and paste into almost any system to apply common settings. Quality of service or class of service, as it's known in Junos, is a great example of that. And I'm going to show you here just simply in Notepad. You can use your favorite text editor for this. But basically, this section here that I'm highlighting is what makes up the actual class of service settings in the platform. And it's just a simple subsection of the configuration that I can literally copy and paste into there. And the only small tweak that we'll do outside of that is to add a single command statement underneath some logical interfaces in there, and we'll go through that here in a minute. But we're going to start by going through my favorite method of editing the configuration in Junos, and that's using the CLI editor, which is basically like a live text editor for the configuration in the platform. So I'm just simply logged into the JWeb interface, and this navigation will change sometimes between Junos versions. And this particular version, it's going to be under Device Administration, and then under Tools and CLI Editor. And I simply have a completely textualized view of the entire configuration on the system. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here, add a new line, and you can see from my text example, I'm going to copy that portion I highlighted and just simply paste it into my system here, and I'm going to hit commit. And I have configured quality of service in this Juniper SRX system. Okay, so let's take a look at the configuration I just added. So the first thing we're going to go over is classifiers. Basically, this is a mapping that you'll set to map the actual DSCP values you're going to be using in the actual traffic that you're trying to identify and then apply the actual quality of service to. So it's a simple point of defining and matching the actual binary code for the particular DSCP values. You can find simple tables on the internet that will show you the common DSCP values. In this case, we've got a couple common ones here. We've got 40 and 46, which are commonly used for voice and signaling and some other real-time voice or video type of traffic. The last part we're going to look at in this section is the interface definitions. So you'll notice here under interfaces, we've got some probably what might look like some funky stuff here. But basically what we're doing is we're saying apply this class of service to these interfaces. And the way I'm doing it in this example is I'm using wildcarding. So I could call out specific interfaces. So in Junos, a gigabit Ethernet interface is going to be a GIGI 00 some number. 0, 1, 2, 3, depending upon the particular interface. IRBs, which are VLAN interfaces, same thing. The unit number is a custom set value, oftentimes set to just match the VLAN ID, even though they're separate settings. But this would apply to any physical gigabit Ethernet interface and any VLAN interface on this platform. There's lots of interface types. When you get into using high availability, you get into redundant Ethernet interfaces or REITH. So I could simply add another section here that says REITH asterisk and apply the schedule maps and the classifiers to apply the quality of service into those interfaces. Everything else here, you can look it up on the Junos documentation if you're interested in understanding more detail, but frankly, you're good to go with this configuration. Is pretty typical nowadays with the types of bandwidth and internet speeds people are dealing with. There's not a whole lot you need to tweak. Back in the old days, you might have T1 lines, things that, much lower bandwidth and possibilities of higher latency, where you really might had to tweak some of these settings with buffer and things like that. And you really don't have to mess with that anymore. So the last thing we're going to do, as I mentioned earlier, there were some final things to do with the per unit scheduler that you'll find in my configuration example text file. So the last thing we have to do is we have to go back up into our interfaces configuration in the system. And as you can see here, we have an IRB or VLAN interface. And so we need to add that per unit scheduler command underneath that interface in the configuration. And basically what this is doing is normally the scheduling functions are per interface, but because we have logical interfaces, we're telling the system with this command that we need to add per unit. Units would be sub-interfaces. We need to have a per unit scheduler. And that's it. We now have fully functioning quality of service on our Juniper SRX system. Stay tuned for one of my next videos where we'll go through adding another layer into quality of service to add in using firewall filter rules to actually set DSCP values for specific types of traffic that otherwise aren't already marked ahead of time, so that we can match and classify different types of traffic on the fly to then fall into our quality of service. Stay tuned.